In the previous video, we walked through how to refine your problem by developing a conceptual model and hypothesis. Now you're finally ready to go get some data. Getting to some data is exciting, but before you go any further, let's take a look at what data really is. Data is a value that you can assign to the attributes of something. Take, for example, this fire you're looking at. The fact that it's hot and not cold is a value you can ascribe to fire. It's also what's considered a qualitative value, which we'll come back to in a second. You could measure the temperature of the flame, which would be another quantitative attribute. What time the fire started, when it stopped, how far it spread, all these things are data. Fire is a type of damage to a home compared to flooding, wind damage, or earthquakes, which is part of a taxonomy, or putting an item in a given category of similar or related items. You've already gone through this type of exercise in the last section, when you brainstormed different attributes of buildings, some of which were quantitative and some of which were qualitative. Let's look at both of those types of data, along with a few others you might encounter. Most people tend to have a fairly intuitive sense of these terms. Qualitative data describe the qualities of things, for example, what they look like or how they make you feel. They're ultimately somewhat subjective. Quantitative data describe the quantifiable aspects of things, measurable facts like someone's height or the number of community members served by a certain program. Within each type, there's a few distinctions which we'll include here so you become familiar with terms you might run across in the future. The process of analyzing data has its own set of steps, from finding or collecting to downloading, manipulating, and actually analyzing the data. We're going to walk through each of these steps in more detail, starting with finding data. For this example, and your work in general, you will be mostly working with publicly available data, so let's look closer at where you can find sources of government data. Over the past few years, many governments have begun to release data to the public. There's federal efforts like data.gov and data.gov.uk, and over 85 cities have released their own public data portals. Dataportals.org and Socrates Open Data Network are resources for researching for public data sources. You know that your team doesn't have the exact data they want for your city, but maybe you can find something useful in a different public data set. Where do you think you should start looking first? Take a moment to think about that while we recap what we've covered so far.